Good morning, Tony Caravan.
You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, not what you don't. Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale.
It's an excursion into the odd and into the very, very different.
Thank you. Yeah, here we are. What a title for a show. I mean, for those of you seeking this out from a philosophical standpoint, existence of a flow of consciousness vlog on the 21st of January, 5:32 a.m. Eastern Time in the former United States. Let's face the facts. My coffee is hot today. Hotter than usual for some reason. I don't know why. There goes the trucks. We're right on time. See, this is about the time. It's a 25-mile-an-hour zone, as I say all the time. It's a neighborhood. But for some reason, these trucks go barrel-assing up there at, this ridiculously insane speed. Makes no sense whatsoever. So anyway, yeah, this should be an interesting discussion. I have no idea where it's going to go, other than the fact that it was on my mind last night before I went to bed. I almost wrote jotted a note on an index card, as you know I do. But I didn't because I didn't feel there was a need to do it. I had a feeling that this was something that was going to be on my mind throughout the evening. But before we get into that, let's just do a flashback, to some of the stuff we did last year. I'm not going to do this every year, but this is like an extraordinary circumstance. So,
the Weather Watch forecast.
So let's take a look at what's going on around the former United States, as I call it, and a little bit of Canada that we can see, and Mexico. Let's not forget our friends to the south of the border. I remember that place. I don't know if you did it when you were in high school or whatever, but it was like, for some reason, everybody took a bus trip to like south of the border. I don't know. It was basically some place that was designed just to sell souvenirs to like high school kids or bus trips. I don't know. I can remember that. South of the border, which is hard. It's like, I guess it's south of the Mason-Dixon line or something. Somewhere on the East Coast, somewhere down there. I don't know. I forget where it even is. I don't care to know. Anyway, as you can see from these temperatures, it's, baby, it's cold outside, pretty much across the U.S. And you can see, it's interesting to watch how, or observe, I should say, how temperatures vary, in locations at the same latitude, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. So, you could draw a line towards the midsection of the United States, say, where at the East Coast, where you see 31 degrees. And if you go straight across, you hit like 9, 11, 12, 16, 26, 35, and then on the other side, it's like 43. So like at the same latitude, you're going, anywhere from, above freezing to, in the single digits. And the same up north, if you look at New York City. I mean, I know it has to do with ocean temperatures and the conveyor and all that stuff, but like, New York or somewhere around 15 degrees, but if you go across, into the central portions, you see minus 13. And then as you wend your way across, you're basically at or just above freezing. And then, of course, at the, the northern extremes. Well, hold on a second. Did we miss all those? You couldn't hear it because this is a directional microphone. There was just like a train of about 4 trucks going at least 60 miles an hour. The whole reason I have camera 2 up. But anyway, just to get off that thing, in my neck of the woods, I live in the mid-Atlantic states. So currently the temperature here, which just goes to show how these maps, which this is supposedly a current map, it's 3 degrees here, and the high today is going to be 19, and overnight it's going to be 0. 0 Fahrenheit. Okay? You got to put that in. But you see, nowhere on that chart do you see 3 degrees. In fact, the closest thing to, I guess, where I would be somewhere around, well, not really where the 9 is, but I'm kicking in and out because I wanted you to see those trucks because it's just such a bizarre thing. But in any event, yeah, a lot of the temperatures that you're probably experiencing in your particular locale are not even close to this. Like for me, like I said, for example, it's 3 degrees outside. And I know it because I went out to the front porch. But look at that minus 13. Even like Fargo, there's one. See that truck? There's always a car following it thinking, I'm not going to get a ticket. I'll just follow that truck. Anyway, that's that.
The Weather Watch forecast.
Blammo. I only do that now this year, and as long as I do these things, I don't know. Who knows? By the end, this discussion is going to be one that, who knows, after the end of this discussion, I may never do these things again. Because why do we exist? It's like lyricist Hal David asked that question in the Burt Bacharach tune for the theme of the movie Alfie, when he said, what's it all about, right? What's it all about, Alfie? The song stylings of Tony Caravan. And it's like, without, one of the lines in there is, without true love, we just exist, But I mean, and we'll get into that idea, and we could jump into it. We could not jump into it. We'll just see where this goes. I have no notes in front of me, like I said. I didn't even write the word "why do we exist" down, even though it came to me last night, and I knew I was going to talk about that today on the show. And I chose this Michelangelo Sistine Chapel thing. Apart from this being a pretty, bizarre drawing. And in fact, the entire, a lot of, when you look at artists like Michelangelo and Da Vinci, and you really look into some of their work, but particularly Michelangelo, considering, the sculptures and stuff that guy did. Where was his head out, and the talent, and who was he? What was he? Was he even human? But what's interesting in this, and I'm going to blow this up, and it's like, it's not for the idea for people to get a, look at Adam, right? Which is most people are going. What I really want you to focus on, and I'm going to almost take this out of frame a second, is what I want to do is I want you to look at some of the faces over here. This is obviously the bearded man is God, but look at the woman that, his arm is around and the expression on her face. And the expression on some of the other faces. You know, because, you know, this is the kind of stuff that the average person who hasn't really gone there, you know, with binoculars. I'm going to give you a chance. Let's just look at this. This isn't like an art history class or anything of the sort. But I mean, I'm going to blow this up even a little bit more because I have the resolution on this. I have this image. Okay, this is quite an intense image. Let's look at the faces there. What was Michelangelo trying to get across here? Right? It's interesting, isn't it? It's thought-provoking. You know, look at the one face and the just under God's arm. You know, what is that kind of face about? And to the right of the woman who the arm is around, there's that, it's almost, the color is a little reddish almost, like a red face with that very little hair. And the other one like kind of pushing back below that one. You know, and this odd cloth, this shell. So, you know, some people have taken this and have said that if you look at this closely, this is mimics the human brain. You know, like the shape of the brain. You know, that's been forwarded by some people. It's interesting. The shape of the brain. God in the brain. Yeah. It's fascinating, as Spock would say. Right? And of course, as I always say, never let a good Star Trek reference go to waste, right? Hey, Scotty, we're having a discussion today. Get Spock down here. We want to talk about some fascinating stuff. Thanks. Yeah, we'll be a little bit lighthearted about this. We'll get as heavy as we have to get and as light as we need to be. Well, it looks like the trucks have taken a break. We missed that round of insanity. You should have seen it while I was showing you the temperatures. My coffee's still really nice and hot. I've mentioned before, for people who are familiar with this program, that my house, and excuse me, it's going to be one of those clearing of the throat days. My voice seems a little bit deeper. I guess I could almost, pull out the guitar over here and do some Johnny Cash with the way my voice is feeling right now. I hear the train a-running, coming. It's rolling around the bend. But then that's another show. Why do we exist? What's it all about? You know, it's like, you know, and bringing up Hal David, you know, Bacharach David, which a lot of people today just don't know who I'm even speaking about. They were a songwriting team that like kind of peaked in the 60s and the 70s and just wrote some of the greatest songs and really great lyrics. And oddly enough, you know, this little bit of
This is insane.
I believe that that's actually a clip from a Bacharach David song. But you know, I don't forget if the line was without true love or without love. I think it's without true love we just exist, or without love we just exist. You know, and then before I got up, I was laying in bed. I had a good night's sleep last night. I mean, as the second time, I could have gotten up. It was one of those things at like 2 something I was awake. And the cat was bothering me for no known reason because it didn't want food or anything because it never even came down. It's up there. The bedroom is like toasty warm. And I just like, you know. And normally what I do is this is just my little thing. You know, right now we're just, before we get into this totally.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
Sometimes I will spray Lysol spray. Which, by the way, is a contact spray. It's not an aerosol to be used in the air. It doesn't kill germs in the air. Lysol spray is like for people to use on surfaces like a sofa, you know, or a comforter or something that you're not washing every day, you know, regularly. You know, you're not washing your sofa or having your sofa professionally cleaned. But if you want to keep it clean or some stranger came into your house, you know, you spray a little Lysol there and it kills the viruses. 99.9% of viruses and bacteria, so the can says. But normally I'll spray the top of my comforter in the morning, and while I come down here and do this show and then go back up there in a couple hours, and you know, it's any scent VOCs have dissipated and what have you. But it will have killed 99.9% of any bacteria. And it's mainly because the cat is on the comforter, and the cat does visit what we call a litter box. Anyway, same with, you know, dogs that jump on the bed at night for people. It's a good idea to do that. But I didn't even do that because, you know, at some point I'll be, pardon me, taking a shower and I'll wash all my pillowcases and throw all. I think I'm going to do a big laundry, throw everything in the wash today and wash everything. It's about due for that kind of thing. And besides, I'm not going outside. It's going to be in the single digits for the better part of the day. So look at those trucks. So anyway, back to topic. So why do we exist? Right. And, you know, and you look at like I say, I have, you know, from my standpoint, and let me get rid of the title card for a second. You know, we talk about, you know, I have my backyard, and this is a 2-year-old photo. This is my yard. Well, right now my yard's covered with snow if you saw it. But, you know, this has even gotten more, you know, more productive as far as a garden. This is garden growth. This isn't wild whatever. And so it's my little Garden of Eden, so, you know, to keep on topic. And, you know, speaking of songs, you know, this is Virtual Cage, but I also had a song called 2 Hours, which I played at one point here. And I don't believe I have a copy of that here right now. But it deals with this topic, and the last time I touched on this topic, and I'll look here while I'm talking to you, and if it jumps out, I'll play it for you, or I'll show you at least the lyrics to it. But I don't see it, if it doesn't come to me in, you know, within a matter of like 15 seconds or something along those lines. Music. Like I've always said to people, Apple search is the worst. Let's see here. 2 hours. Let's see if I have a lyric sheet of it. Well, I happen to have it in text form. Anyway, let me just give you a little bit of it from my, I think I have a copy of it here. Yeah. I have to stop so I don't get a copyright hit. So just this is the only way you could like kind of beat the YouTube algorithm. And this song you can listen to on Spotify. It's called 2 Hours or So. I think the lyrics coming in now.
There are numerous ancient references to one day being like 1,000 years for the gods.
One day being like 1,000 years.
And though that's hard to fathom for most, it's somewhat plausible in a multiverse quantum space-time relativity sort of way. Now if that day is divided in half, it's 500 years.
If the day is divided in half, it's 500 years. One day is 1,000 years to the gods, or God.
Intense. It's 100 years, or a healthy lifespan.
So if you divide this up, it becomes closer to a human lifespan.
And that 100 years translates into a little over 2 hours, or the length of a long movie or show.
So in other words, when you look at this from the vantage point of God, right, that the 100 years, you know, taking that 1,000 years one day, and you divide this down, it turns out that our life is comparable to about 2 years, or what I'm saying is like a movie.
So I put it to you that our lives are nothing more than a drama that we may well choose to experience.
Right? It's pretty crazy, isn't it?
The rules are simple. You will become the character you play and have no memory of the entity.
You'll become the character that you play and have no memory of the entity that you may have been.
That you truly are until the spectacle is over.
And then when it's over, then your memory comes back.
Life is a fleeting dreamscape that is merely a blink of the cosmic eye.
Life is a fleeting dreamscape in the blink of the cosmic eye.
Reality is nothing more than a perception. So the question remains, why would you choose this arduous?
So why would you choose this? Right?
In the first place. Or perhaps it wasn't really your choice at all.
See, my beat poetry stuff is pretty crazy, isn't it?
What have we learned through the experience? And how will the actions we have taken and the choices we have made affect the rest of our eternal existence?
Anyway, that's a song called 2 Hours or So. You can listen to it free on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Prime if you have, you know, an Echo Dot or something. Available wherever music is playable, you know, whatever. But that's another concept, you know, to think about. So what if, you know, and this is no, and the concept isn't, well, that's kind of a different, unique concept. But I mean, it falls in line with some other ancient concepts, particularly maybe some of the things by the Gnostics I think I had a video where I was talking a little bit about the demiurge. Well, I've had a couple of videos where I talked about this whole idea of the soul trap and this demiurge that is basically in charge here. And that, this kind of gets into the idea of a prison planet. We're not going to go on that, so I don't want to scare people away necessarily about dealing with that, because we're going to stick on topic on this pretty much so. And like I said, I don't have a script for this show, so we're going to take it wherever it takes us. But I just want to explore this idea for a second so we have all this stuff in our mind as we move forward. And so this is just one concept. This isn't necessarily my concept, okay? And so the idea going on here is, I'm just checking out some of the chat. So the idea is that, one concept would be that what if this were like an amusement park? Literally. What if life as we know it, or the planet Earth, right? This concept of Disney World. Like there's there's sometimes when, and a lot of this stuff is going to just be, some of this stuff might be mind blowing, and I'm drawing on stuff that I've been dealing with for so many years that, like, for me it's commonplace. So some of it might just seem like totally off the wall to you. But the idea that there are things, the answers are in clear sight in many cases. Okay? So the idea that we have video games, right? So in other words, let's take, for example, the simulation theory, which I don't particularly prescribe to, okay? Or subscribe to, or whatever. The idea is that because we're creating a metaverse because it's kind of a way, because life really is a metaverse, right? Life really is a simulation. We create amusement parks and Disney worlds and places like that because that's really what this is about. And somehow deep things that leak out, this soul trap. That's the whole idea partially of this demiurge idea, this Gnostic concept, that Earth is like a prison planet, all right? And that somehow, for some of us, we don't forget everything, and pieces leak out through this connection we have, because in other words, no matter which way you look at it, humans are an android or an avatar of sorts, right? We have a bioelectric brain, and I wrote this a book which I talk about very often. It's not my latest book. It was my latest book is Then What, but prior to that I wrote this book called Codex. And the first part of that book deals with the hard problem of consciousness, which is a very serious issue, and it's along this topic. Excuse me. And the hard problem of consciousness is the argument that many people, neuroscientists and people who study this sort of thing, professional people, it's written up in trade papers constantly. It's an ongoing issue that science is trying to solve, that you have a bioelectric brain, we know, and we know an awful lot about the bioelectric brain. One just has to look at even Elon Musk trying to put implants into the human brain to stimulate, in other words, to make my hand do this or whatever. But we also see life, perceive life in the first person. And we have this thing called consciousness. Some people refer to it as their soul. New Agers might refer to it, the spiritual it's like spiritualism, other ancient religions along those same kind of lines, or a combination thereof. And the idea is that there's something outside of us, and this is more of a radio, television, receiver of sorts, right? And then you have like even Tesla, and we're talking about the man, who invented AC, alternating current, and many other things, responsible for actually wireless communications and most of the things we see today. That he talked about the ether and the power and so somewhere out there. And then, there were others that talk about the Akashic records. And so that all the information exists, and it's just out there in this ether. Pardon me while I drink my coffee. It's 6:02 a.m. And I've got a right to drink some coffee. Or as Toulouse-Lautrec said, "Mother, I need my cognac." Jose Ferrer in that movie, the movie Moulin Rouge, not the remake of recent years, but the old one from 60 or more years ago, 60, 70 years ago. So that's one way of looking at it. So imagine life being, you chose to come here to experience this Disney World of sorts, right? This 2-hour ride. Because in our real, dimension, whatever whatever vibration we're at, as Tesla also said, frequency, right? Vibration, understanding those things. So, the multiverse, think of different dimensions, and different levels of, in other words, we could be simultaneously, multiple things could be simultaneously existing, almost in the same plane, but just invisible, to one to the other. And it might be possible to actually to go from one to the other. And some people feel this, what we're doing is we're here, and this is away from the other aspect. Like I said, I'm going to be all over the place. This is flow of consciousness. Just try to keep up with me. That, when this life ends, you move up to another. Or maybe you move down, But then there's the others that believe in this like demiurge type of thing, and that this is kind of a prison planet. And for some reason, our souls have been trapped here. And part of that thing is that our memory has been wiped. And so that life, the purpose of life, is to get off of this planet. That is the purpose of life, is to get out of this prison planet, is to escape this planet. And, that's a fascinating concept too. But the other one would be, as I say in that song, or pose there also, is that you may have chosen to come here and experience this. And Earth may just be this weird amusement park for beings, I would say, beyond our comprehension, but they're just beyond our current comprehension because we are those beings. And so we got a ticket to do this. But in our time, right, this is like going into a movie theater. It's really only about 2 hours, right? And so when you look through the ancient text and you see when they talk about time in a fashion of 1,000 years being a day and things of that nature, then it suddenly makes sense. So that line of thinking, is plausible, for someone who studies these ancient texts and various things. So it's very fascinating, to think about. All right. So that's just one off, what we would think off the wall way of looking at, what is, why do we exist, or what's the true meaning and purpose of life. And the other one is, this idea that we might explore a little bit more is this idea of exploring love, right? When people are in love, it's like the idea of, it's like it's a feeling, as if you're complete, right? As a human being. That's pretty much been erased from modern society, because modern society is so divisive and filled with hate. And, the focus is on these meaningless things like politics and the cult of personality and diversions of life and even the materialistic things, right? Do we exist to just accumulate all sorts of things that we just, when we die, they just, get scattered to the wind? Or if we have family or relatives, they fight over them or divvy them up, right? Or just some house is auctioned off and people take all your stuff and whatever. Is that the purpose of life? To accumulate things that just have no meaning to you after this journey is over, right? Is, you see, the very unlikely, like I find that one very unlikely. Now, the idea of feeling totally complete and the Bacharach David thing, without true love, we just exist, right? We exist as these avatars or as these androids, whatever, bioelectrical units, right? Bioelectric brain. But then again, it's, and truly, and it's like anything else, you can't grasp the intensity of love no more than you can grasp the intensity of pain once you are no longer in love or in pain, in that kind of pain. And, particularly on the pain side, these are mechanisms of the bioelectric system that are basically there for a purpose. If you were able to remember the worst pain you've ever been in, then, well, it would drive you mad. Because, I know myself, like I said, I've been taken away in an ambulance once or twice. It's, been wreathing in pain. And so it's impossible. So I can tell you that happened to me, but I can't recreate that in my mind, imagine it or anything, because my brain is protecting me from that, even though the pain itself was imagined. In a sense, it was fabricated within, the bioelectric brain for a purpose of warning the body that it had a serious problem that needed to be dealt with. But the brain, the bioelectric brain, will not reproduce that. That's a protection. It's a mechanism built into the bioelectric brain. Which brings us to this idea that, that gets back to this, this thing where we look at the Michelangelo painting and the concept of the religious God, God creator concept, that, and humans being created. And no matter, in my mind, okay, no matter which way you look at it, this concept, they used to talk about when they were trying, there was an argument some 30 some years ago in schools when they were first starting to try to, the administrators, this is 30, 35 years ago. It could have been as long as 40 years ago. I don't recall exactly. I can't pinpoint a date on it. But when the schools were starting to have problems where there were more administrators than teachers, and they decided that they wanted to create productive, citizens, not an educated public. They just wanted to prepare people to be, wage slaves, basically, serve society, the totalitarian state. In other words, what we're seeing, what's going on right now, isn't something that just happened overnight, right? And this started when you started to see administration buildings pop up all over the U.S. And the idea then, there used to be an argument, was based on intelligent design versus creationism, all right? And so the way that the religious were trying to push the idea against Darwin's theory of evolution, which really is still a theory, and there's so many flaws in it, it's pathetic, but that's not what I'm going to get into. But maybe it's something we need to at least identify and, acknowledge that there are flaws in Darwin's theory. But when there were those that were rebelling against Darwinism, okay, rather than what they were using was intelligent design as their argument, as opposed to just outright saying God created man, like the Sistine Chapel. And so they would point to these machines inside the cell, the human body. And there were specific things. I mean, there's incredible things inside the cells that literally act like they're motors running at RPMs that we can't even imagine. And the numbers of them and all of this stuff acting in unison and glued together somehow, held together. You're right. We're, billions, trillions of things acting in concert in order for us to be what we are, right, is quite fascinating. And so in the age where we're building robots and we're building humanoid robots, it seems to me almost like a no-brainer that the concept of intelligent design is a viable argument for people, right? Because as we recreate things in our own image and likeness, i.e., Boston Dynamic robots and what have you, and AI for that matter, everything we're doing is trying to recreate. And I often criticize certain aspects of AI and robotics in that regard. I'm saying you're looking, all you have to do is look in the mirror and you'll see one of the best androids, robots, and AI systems ever created. So why are you trying to recreate something that already exists and is beyond your capabilities, and that may be thousands of years or more beyond your ability to create? And so why isn't the focus on, and this is along this line, so why isn't the focus on living the best life we can and making these biological units, getting back to keeping them, in other words, taking them to Jiffy Lube, right? You catch my drift. But instead, what we're doing is we're like kind of putting a wrench in the machine, right? So when human lifespan has gone down 2 years over the past several years, and it has nothing to do with the current thing going around. You see what I mean? We have these walking, talking, thinking AI, highly advanced androids, us. And for some reason, we're more concerned with creating duplicates that will never come close to the complexity of what we are. And what we're doing is meanwhile, while we're doing this, we're destroying the quality of life and even the function of these human bodies. And we're totally ignoring the idea of why we exist and the meaning and purpose of life. You know, that question is left for those, some philosophers? You know, it's fascinating. And that's why people don't understand when I say, you know, when I say, stop with the cult of personality. Why is politics pop culture? These are meaningless things. These are meaningless pursuits. They have no effect on the bigger questions of life and your existence. But let's get back into the Burt Bacharach idea, and without true love, we just exist. And the concept of life and love being the ultimate. You know, the idea of why we find peace in, you know, different individuals find peace and happiness and nirvana, whatever you want to call it. Exaltation, the highest, you know, feelings that a human can possibly feel, hiking, you know, or to the top of a mountaintop. You know, I've been fortunate in my life because I've worked with all sorts of people, and I've traveled a lot. So I've known people, and I've had people express to me the feeling. I mean, could you imagine what it's like? I just described something to you, and I've been looking for the audio, and I have it. It's just on. I have so many archives you cannot imagine. And like I say, unlike these other people, I'm not monetized or anything like that. I don't have an assistant. I live alone here with a cat that doesn't even come down and hang out with me anymore. I got to go up into the bedroom, and then it hangs. Then it's a lap cat. So I don't have anybody assisting me going through these vast archives, audio archives and stuff that I have. But I could recall the situation quite clearly. I think I may or may not have alluded to this in a recent video. So when I had this is in the early 2000s, when I was covering an expedition to in the Himalayas, and one of the members got sick, I think, somehow. Had an oxygen problem. You know, when you get to that elevation, you know, there's people have problems breathing, you know. So one of the individuals couldn't go on, and ended up being put on oxygen. Another individual had to, I guess, assist taking that person down off the mountain. Someone else might have had another problem. I forget the specifics of that. I don't remember all the details. I've been involved in so many expeditions, a lot on the Himalayas, many in Antarctica, and many in at the North Pole, and some in the Amazon, along the Amazon. But on this particular expedition, and I forget which peak, which summit, the last survivor of the team, so to speak, who was making his way up, I had then had my main setup to communicate, the base station I was basically where I was sleeping. And so I was sleeping, and I had a setup, quite sophisticated setup that's beyond what people even have today. But I was, woken up and alerted by my equipment. And so I quick jumped out of bed, went over to the, to the equipment, and it was Chris Erickson is the name of the person, who's also a quite incredible photographer. And if I advise you to check out some of his work, because he's not only gone on expeditions, the world over, but his photography of these remote areas is just breathtaking. Okay. And he was on the phone, on a satellite phone, and he had just reached the summit. Now, he's in the Himalayas, and it's like midnight for me, back where I was. All right. So I'm awoken. I'm like, and it's, I'm going to dig this thing out, but, it's not going to be tomorrow. So at some point within the next several weeks, I'm going to make a point to dig out some of these classics. And something to the effect of, Tony, hey man, I made it to the summit. I'm standing here. You just can't, like words can't describe it. You can't imagine it. And I'm talking to this guy who's alone at one of the highest elevations on the planet. And he's trying to relate this feeling of exaltation and accomplishment and everything to me over the phone. Of course, I'm recording it. Like I said, I have a copy of it. I just have to dig it out through these incredible, vast archives I have of this stuff. I did this for so many years. And they were real audio files, so I'll have to convert it too, but that's okay. I can do that. And it was like at that point, it was quite clear that he was experiencing, his purpose in life. I mean, he had reached at that moment something that was just most people couldn't imagine. And of course, he took pictures and stuff. And so, these are the experiences of humans doing these things, driven to explore this world, right? What is it? What is it that motivates the explorer? The extreme athlete or the extreme explorer, the people who choose to climb the 7 summits, right? People that go into these caves, right? People that go deep into the Amazon rainforest. People that hike, walk. I knew 2 different people that walked to the South Pole. Robert Swan, of course, Sir Robert Swan, I believe now. And Doug Staup. And I covered expeditions for both of those individuals, different expeditions, and various expeditions for those fellows. And I've covered expeditions to the North Pole, which I have video and which I can show you, and probably that's kind of some of the stuff I'll get into this year. But that's one aspect of what, this adventure of life being an adventure, right? And so you have the adventurer. And is that the meaning and a purpose of life? Well, for those people, it seems to them that that's it, and that the feeling they have, this, which is in their own words, indescribable almost. Well, not almost, it is indescribable. And even when you see these photos, and you can buy photos of people, of expeditions, people have been doing this for many years, but the photo just doesn't capture it, right? Just like the close-up of this, Michelangelo, doesn't, there's so much you can look into there, is that the brain? I mean, what is being communicated? Is the meaning of life, is the meaning of life to a painter or a sculptor, the creation, this idea of being driven to create, to express. And what is it that we're expressing? And I don't want to take anything away from the adventurers, but is that adventurous spirit, part of that idea that I alluded to earlier on, this idea of us somehow inherently deep inside our subconscious or our subconscious, this need for us or attempt for us to escape from this prison planet, right? Or this reality or this realm, perhaps. Maybe another better way to put it. This dimension, this, what have you. And then why is it that when you find, some people they just don't understand this term, but when you find true love, or you're in the moment of that, right, immersed, and you feel complete, and nothing else matters, and it's like, I just want to hold on to this moment. This is it, right? But even that becomes fleeting, and for so many people ends eventually, which is unfortunate. And just like I said before with pain, you can never really recreate that. And the further away from both of those instances, whether it's love or pain or whatever you get, the less you can, you can even grasp the intensity of the moment. So that can't be, the purpose of life. Though someone who, you find these elderly couples, and they've been together for, they say, oh, we met 55 years. We've been together for 55 years. Right? You have people like that, both manage to survive, and they're having their 60th wedding anniversary or something, or 80 in their 80s. But there's so few people that are at that, And no doubt probably along the way they've had their ins and outs, and it hasn't been, one constant moment of ecstasy. Because that's what I'm really kind of talking about. I'm talking about a moment. I'm talking about that moment when you're not just in love, not just making love, but making love, and in a mindset, all of those things combined, and you are complete. You feel complete as a human being. But that can't be the reason we exist. But it could be, if you get back to the opening song, my song 2 hours or so. It could be the reason why you chose to come to this planet, or to allow your consciousness to be connected to this avatar, to this android bioelectric body, right? In the Michelangelo picture, again, to look at this, if you consider that Michelangelo and that cloth containing God and these angelic or cherubim or whatever they are, right? These people surrounding, maybe propping up God in this weird cloth thing, and that thing kind of looking like the human brain, right? And that the spark is is this idea of Adam consciousness meeting with the physical form, right? Which is this goes towards this idea I have of this being an adventure. So that would be the one idea, one concept. It's fascinating. To think about stuff like that. Right? So few people think about stuff like that. So many people are just bored with things like this. But their lives, in effect, are meaningless. They live meaningless lives. Like, imagine, and I hate to bring this up, but I keep this thing here, and I'll probably keep this up here for a while, is that what are those people hoping for? Is anyone there thinking about the meaning of life? There are no doubt many people there who are very, quote unquote, religious, right? Okay. But I mean, what are they there for? Do they understand, the concept of, the marionette? And maybe this concept that I'm talking about, this idea of existence, in effect, does that even add an extra level or more depth to the concept that media, politicians, and this material world, the corporatocracy, that it's all just one big puppet show, right? Are these people grasping the concept, or even getting close to asking a question, or do they even care about why they exist, the true meaning of life, the purpose of life? Is all they want? It's like my book up there, over here. Then what? And the same as the shirt that I have, over there in the upper corner. I have that hoodie, by the way. It's a great, comfortable hoodie. But the idea is that then what? Right? That's the question I'm asking. So you succeed with whatever your, ambition is. Then what? One could also ask of the person who, climbs the 7 summits, then what? right? The idea of war and battle. You defeat the enemy, then what? Well, we win. Yeah, we win until there's another war, right? Politicians. You win till there's another election. Like I said, when I was younger, I played sports. I have nothing against sports and athletics. All right. I mean, the human body needs exercise to survive. It's one of the things. It's an odd thing if you think about it, right? I mean, it's partially because of the lifestyles we have, because we live in these boxes, whether it's a house or an apartment, it doesn't really matter. We're still enclosed in some sort of cage of our own design, right? And so we need to go and exercise in order for this biological unit to function properly. And if we don't, then we develop things like type 2 diabetes, obesity, and all sorts of other diseases, by not moving and exercising. It's a strange machine that has to be, like a dog taken out for a walk, right? It's kind of like what it's like, Yesterday I took a walk. Not so much because I wanted to. It's freezing out there. I did it yesterday because I knew today would be colder. But I was nothing more than a dog. I had to go out for a walk. What kind of machine is that? What kind of life is that? So we exist to maintain these biological units, but not really, because these biological units, they don't last. And as I said in the outset, we've taken almost 2 years off the life expectancy of these particular biological units due to our current society and our obsessions with politics and the cult of personality and following the advice of bureaucrats and looking to the internet for answers. I asked my pharmacist yesterday about, we've been talking about, I've been dealing with some gallbladder issues. I'd say they're more than just issues, but I've been eating a certain diet that I think, knock on wood, has been holding this, like I said, the barbarians at the gate. And I said to the pharmacist, who was busy, very busy at the time, was on the phone. Then I wait for her to get off the phone, and then she was fiddling with some pills that fell over. And so she came over. It was nice enough to do that. And I said, hey, what's the story on this? I said, I got some gallbladder issues and stuff. And what's the story on this like ox bile and bile salts and things like that? I said, is there anything to that? And she said, well, those are more homeopathic type of remedies. She said, there's nothing necessarily wrong with them, and they might offer some minor help, but they're not a cure. They're not a cure-all, and they won't, at the point of someone who would have, like, say, a full gallbladder filled with stones or something like that. They're not going to reverse that much. So someone with like someone suffering with some, liver health, maybe a couple of stones or something like that, they could be helpful, but not for someone with, has been diagnosed with, say, a gallbladder that's filled with stones or something. And, I had hoped, I had asked my doctor some similar things. She was like, well, everything in moderation, because I seek medical professionals out, because I tried the internet, right? I tried watching videos of even doctors on the internet. I've tried researching, at major institutions and what one would call respectable sites. I've even read medical papers, that archives from the National Institute of Health, and Harvard Medical, things of that nature. And what I found is that, it's all contradictory. So we have this internet, right? We have this information age, and yet life expectancy in the U.S. has gone down. We've been going through some kind of pandemic for 2 years now. If you look back to the original interviews done with Sky News of one of the former head of intelligence and the head of CIA, U.S. CIA, that they had information linking that this thing occurred in the summer, that they were getting feedback, they were getting bits of information as early as the summer of 2019 on this. And then in the fall of 2019 you had Event 201. And then as the winter of 2019, you had the WHO publicly saying this thing wasn't transmissible from human to human. And it wasn't until we got into calendar year 2020 that, things started to escalate to the point where people were, once this thing had hit 190 plus countries, which is kind of very bizarre, considering some of these countries were just so isolated that how did it even get there? But nonetheless, we've had this thing for 2 years, attacking these biological units, these intelligent design machines that have immune systems built into them to fight disease. And so we're at this situation where, it seems everything that's being done is to destroy these units. Right? Which almost goes back to that concept of the demiurge. How had humans over the past several decades started to achieve enough knowledge and information, and were we on the verge of possibly figuring it all out, and then somehow, blammo, we're hit with one thing after the other, and now totally thrust into either diversion or some sort of disease, be it man-made or what have you. And that these shells, these avatars, these intelligently designed bioelectric units are being further weakened, to become these shells to house these trapped souls, if you will. So why do we exist? So I still will say that, love, that feeling of love, that moment, of being truly in love, that ecstatic moment is certainly a reason why I would, pay the ticket to get on the ride if I were in a situation. See, this also assumes that whatever kind of being our consciousness truly is, in other words, this consciousness that we have that exists on some other plane, some other dimension, some parallel universe, that apparently, as far-fetched, as that sounds to the average person, but as far out and desirable as that might sound to another person, the idea that one would want to could not experience love and ecstasy or that feeling of being on the top of the summit, or, you know, as me personally as a musician, and any musician or artist can tell you, that feeling of like if you're playing with a band, or sometimes even myself when I was recording songs, a moment sometimes where you're just overwhelmed with that energy, that spirit of that music, you know, that creative energy, and you're just taken almost to another place, right? You know, it's like a jam session with musicians. If you're a musician, you could understand that. But even the average person who's not a musician, you know, they can have a song that just hits them, and they just put it on the headphones and play it a couple of times over and over or something. Or go to a concert and they have, you know, as we refer to, get their mind is blown. It's as if someone who not only creates art, painting, a sculpture, you know, speaking of Michelangelo over here, but that the person that goes to the Sistine Chapel just stares up there in awe, or goes to a gallery and is just taken into another world. It's like good literature, poetry, both the writer, you know, of the book or the poem, the song, the painting, the sculpture, you know, what have you, is transformed and is taken into this world of ecstasy that the person on the receiving side is also there. Which again may be another reason why you would take, you know, get a ticket. It's like that. I mean, it's not, I don't believe it was, I met Eddie Money one time. I wish I would have thought of this back then when I did. But I don't believe it was a motivation in his mind. Was he had a song called 2 Tickets to Paradise, but he was talking about, you know, I think it was more of a dealing with a girl, you know. But the idea of like, why would you take the 2 tickets to paradise, this being paradise? And then what does that really say about when this is all over? And for those of us who kind of look, you know, I don't mean us necessarily, because I'll tell you, my mind, I have no idea. I am still open. I write. My life is one big search. I've written 10 books. I say this all the time, 11 books actually, 50 songs, and I don't know, 600 videos. And I still don't profess to have the answers to this. I'm still searching. That's why I do this. I've said that before. I'll watch this video when it's over, just like I watch all my videos, because it's the way of talking about this to somehow, in an unscripted form, to see how to maybe be enlightened by this flow of consciousness and these questions that just are coming to me as I go. Just as if I were in a discussion with several people. But I don't have several people. I live alone with a cat. So this is how I do this thing. And so what's disconcerting about this, you know, which I hadn't thought about before, I'm telling you, because this is the first time I've really delved into this on a show like this, is the idea that if indeed this we're here because of choice, our own choice, to experience this 2 hours like my song, which I recommend you listen to again. You know, go to Spotify and just listen to it. It doesn't cost you anything. to seek out 2 hours 2 hours or so by Tony Caravan. All right. Or Apple Music or one of those places. I don't know. But I mean, that basically lays the foundation for what we're questioning here. But if we did make a choice to come here, what does that say about what we are as beings, conscious beings disconnected from this particular unit? I mean, forget about the idea that this is all it is, the way some neuroscientist and some hardline biologists, look at it. They go, oh, your brain just creates consciousness. You are you are. When you die, it's just you die. It's blackness. That's it. It's the end of it all. Right? Man, that's even more of a reason, if that be the case, not to go to an event like this or not to turn on the TV and watch politics or the news or give a shit about anything. Even more of a reason than asking the questions. But if the idea is to climb the 7 summits to experience love and ecstasy, music, art, the things in life, the beauty of nature, right? Just the sheer beauty of nature, the 5 senses that we have, the sights, the sounds, the tastes, the feelings, right? The smell, of a flower. Is that, and the idea that we would be what? Some sort of, floating gaseous, star-like being that has evolved into something that all we have is awareness. Right? So, is the sun aware? Simply aware? The cosmos, But that we've evolved beyond the point of being able to experience these things, these living things. It's a very fascinating point, and I think you're following my trend of thought. So, without true love, we just exist. Without good music, good art, without adventure, without the beauty of nature, without the sunrise, the sunset, the sound of the surf, the things we do, we just exist. We're nothing. And so where does politics come into there? Where does greed come into that, right? Because politics is greed, right? Right? Where does, this idea of victory, where does war come into that? See, it doesn't. It doesn't. Do you see the absurdity of these things? But, I stress that issue all the time. Their meaninglessness. It's meaningless. Hey, did you hear that it looks like we're going to go to war with Ukraine and Russia? And it's going to be, is that why we exist? Is that why we exist? I don't think so. So if it's not, if we just didn't get a ticket to paradise to experience something we no longer can experience as some kind of higher dimensional being, okay? See, I always used to always tell people, and they talk about heaven, and these people go to heaven and they have this idea, even these sickos that do these violent acts, they go, oh, you're going to go to heaven and have so many virgins or something like that. I'm going, well, when it's over, it's over. What kind of, you're not going to have a body, So even if you believe in the concept of the soul, okay, you're going to have a soul. Well, the people don't grasp that idea. So if we exist here, like some people think this is some random thing, crawled out of the slime Darwinian, nonsense, which is like I say, I can't stress as much. It's as much as a theory as Einstein's theory of relativity and the Big Bang theory. They're just theories. All right. Theories that people have poked holes in all of them and have alternative theses and, hypotheses and all that. So I have to admit, as I get older, I question, the true meaning and purpose of life. And why do I exist? Do I exist to watch? I'm watching like the TV show Fringe now. That's how I've been ending my days. There's like 6 seasons of it. I'm only on the first season. I've been watching it for a couple of days. I watch a couple episodes every night. That'll get me through. I see that I just got a notification that one of those Netflix series is come. They finally have the part 4 of. I forget what it is, but we're getting into that time where there's some things. There's stuff. They're starting to, some things have been made. There's content. So do I exist to sit in a chair in my bedroom or lay in bed before I go to bed and watch an episode of something? I mean, I have to admit I enjoy good music, and there's times I've sat in my chair or I've sat around and I've listened to or watched videos of Diana Krall playing the piano and singing. Man, it's like a dream, Sometimes I get into classical music, some of the great classical music artists, performances. And sometimes like I said recently, I've gotten in Ozzy Osbourne's Paranoid album, played loud and listened to the lyrics. But it's entertainment, passes the time. It's like there's an expression I was thinking about earlier today. It's like out of mind. They say, it was that, people who drink, they drink to, to get out of their out of their mind, or, there's all kinds of expressions around that. I'm not going to explore all the way people describe people who sit at a bar and drink. But I spent a better part of my younger years, I was the type of guy who went to bars, I wasn't a club type of person, I wasn't really into dancing. Dancing was just like a goofy thing. I never, if I was on the dance floor, I was just being, intentionally doing something goofy and foolish. But, unless I was slow dancing with some woman that I was in love with or something, I've been in love many times. I've allowed myself to fall in love over the years. That's not really a possibility anymore for me. So it's like, that's one of the reasons, I guess why a guy like me would question this kind of thing, right? Because that chapter's over. That page has been turned, unfortunately. I just don't see it happen. I just don't see it happening. I don't see how, and particularly in the world and the way things are right now. But I would drink. It's like I used to tell people why I would watch people smoke, and they would just like smoke and I used to say, when I used to smoke and then I quit smoking, but when I did smoke, I enjoyed it. It was like tobacco pleasure. Then I quit smoking. It's no good for you. The cigarettes were like harsh. They were burning the back of my throat. Just to end that whole thing, just so you know, I mean, I've had I've had CT scans and stuff, and, knock on wood, my lungs seem to be clear. And all that stuff, because I quit smoking cigarettes 20 years ago or something like that, or close to it, 15. And I never smoked as a kid either. It was just like it was like kind of an interim thing. The bar years, right? I used to smoke, but up to like this past summer, I used to sit down. I have a bar in my kitchen I built instead of a island. It's like a bar. And I would sit there. Sometimes a friend or somebody or two would come by, and, but I would sometimes sit there and have a couple of beers and a couple of cigars, listening to music, and it was an enjoyable experience. And the idea is that I used to openly admit, when I did smoke, I enjoyed tobacco pleasure. I would openly admit that I drank a beer, not because I particularly liked the flavor, though there were some good beers out there, but that part of the process was to, get a buzz, right? So it's one of those experiences in life. And one could look at that as a soul experience, in effect. Being a being in another dimension, right? Being unable to experience that concept. That might be the same as somebody who's having some sort of religious experience at some evangelical, gathering, right? Or someone who's into yoga, or, a Buddhist, or someone who's into, serious meditation. You see what I mean? There are so many things that we can experience as these human android bioelectric intelligently designed machines. Like I say, which goes against like most of what big tech is doing, particularly in the areas of AI and robotics. And it's the same with big pharma and all of that, and big ag. It's like, for all the advancement that has been made over the past decades, we've lowered our lifespans by several years, or at least close to a couple of years now at this juncture. We've got a rampant disease floating around, and the quality of life for most of the 8 billion people on this planet is subpar. I mean, it's just not, they're just not happy. Forget about having the chance to experience ecstasy, elation, true love, right? Adventure, beauty, truth and beauty, knowledge, right? Some people, are blown away by just knowledge, learning about things, understanding something. people raising a child, having a child, family to them. That's like an experience, you know, a woman giving birth, a father being a part of that whole situation, and the joy of parenthood. You see? All of these things that, they seem to give life meaning without a doubt. But the question is, why do we exist? Is that the purpose of life? And the hard scientist, the atheist, type will say, well, yeah, it's a biochemical reaction in the brain so that, so the purpose is to procreate and continuation of the species, and evolution, Well, how does that play into art? Right? You have to ask that, person those questions. How does that play into someone climbing the peak? What is that, left over from something? What? Discovery? What? How does that play into why create a sculpture? Why have four people with musical instruments in a room suddenly, involved in a jam session and suddenly get into something what we would call like a groove, just where everybody's just into something where it's like, oh man, that was great. That was really cool. And everybody just sitting, nodding their heads at each other going like, yeah, wow, that was wild. You see? Two people making love, and it's like, it was great for the both of them, right? Two people being in love, and the two of them are genuinely in love at the same time, at the same instant, right? Looking at the beauty of nature and experiencing it together or even individually. Like I say, reading poetry or a book, a novel or whatever. The creative arts, the idea, those things that seem to transcend the physical, right? Because they do indeed, And you can't just describe that as some kind of Darwinistic, right, bioelectric function, because it serves no bioelectric function to have that metaphysical experience. It's a soul experience. It was like a Jimi Hendrix song or something. But yeah. So, what is it? What is it? What's it all about, Alfie? That's where that song, that's part of that song, that Bacharach David song I started this all with. What's it all about? Without true love, we just exist. But it's more than love. It's music, it's art, it's adventure. It's parenthood. It's, like I say, it's religion. It's everything. It's all of the things. It's nature. It's the planet. It's everything. But that seems to be what it's all about. But is that why? Does it explain why we exist? Or is there no reason why we exist? And did we just come here to experience those things? And like I said, what does it say about when it's all over? Is it like the kid on the ride? Hey, mommy, daddy, or whatever, I want to do that again. I want to go on that ride again. People talk about something called the soul trap. It gets back into that demiurge thing. So, so people want to reincarnate. I didn't touch on that one. Reincarnation. Reincarnation. Think about that. That's an interesting thing. People don't just freeze on that word, the concept. Let's reincarnate. Like, I want to go on that ride again. Pretty weird.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
But who knows, There's stories about that. People talk about it. Sorry about the movement. So, it's one of those, I can't, I just wanted to explore it, explore the idea, ask the questions, try to answer some. You could see, it's 7:12 a.m. I started this show late so you could start to see, the outside world come to life. We don't normally see that. It's a Friday. There'd be nothing better for me to do today to have Friday happy hours, but I don't know anybody around here that want to do that. The only person I know works late on a Friday, so it's not going to happen. Yeah, it's very strange. It's a very strange existence that we have, Very strange. Puzzling. We'll explore this. I'll watch this back. Hopefully you got something about this. It opened up some things into your mind, some questions. I don't know if there really is an answer. I don't know if our brains are capable of that. Perhaps there's people in mental institutions that have the answer. And that's the thing, because it would drive us mad if we knew why we exist. If we knew the true meaning of life, the purpose of life, Did guys like Da Vinci and Michelangelo, did they have it figured out? People like that. Who knows, right? There are so many books out there, so much knowledge that's just not being taught in schools anymore, or perhaps was never taught to most people. Libraries people go into, libraries that exist, people go in to use the computer or something. Right? And like I said, most of the stuff on the internet is, it's fake. It's like pay to play. They're just trying to sell you something. It's like television news. The news is just content in between the commercials. It's a reason to keep you tuned in so you see the commercials. But politics and the cult of personality and all this stuff going on, man, that's like the least. I could tell you one thing I do know. I don't understand the meaning of life right now. I can't give you the answer of why we exist, what we're doing here. All right? I've got some ideas and we'll explore it further. But one thing I do know for sure, it's not about politics. It's not about pop culture. It's not about voting. Okay? It's not about any of this nonsense that's going on now. And if the people who really were in charge of things, who really, really cared or had any sense and sensibility, they wouldn't be putting us through this torment. They would just be passing out antiviral pills instead of sending us tests. Think about that. Right? Or they'd send you a test, and it says, if this test, here's 2 tests, and if or here's 3 tests, and if 2 out of the 3 or all 3 of these tests come positive, take this red pill. If these tests are negative, don't take it, right? I don't know, man. We've reached a point where, it's just gotten to, for so many billions of people, that's billions with a B.
This is a nightmare. It must be a nightmare.
And for other people, it's like,
This is insane.
And I don't know. There's no answer, because the powers that be, here's what they think of you. They see you as cattle, as a cow. You're either on their tax farm, or, you got health insurance, so you're in their, medical farm, whatever. You're just a means for them, for them to be, further enhance their wealth. Power and greed, right? And people say, why do we exist? And that's another thing I could tell you. It's certainly not to gain power. And why do we exist? It's not about greed. It's not about the accumulation of all kinds of things. And the idea of this transhumanism and stuff, and people think they're going to live forever or put their consciousness into a machine. Don't they understand that their consciousness isn't even in their bioelectric brain to begin with? People just don't get it. They just don't get it. And so it's hard to be, a thinker. You know what I mean? Because that's another thing. A lot of us enjoy conversation. A lot of us enjoy exploring ideas, which is another thing that is, I will take just as, put, on the same level of exploration, adventure, and whatever, is a good conversation with someone. And the exploration of ideas. But I don't know. I really don't know. Yeah, you can look out my window up there. You see camera 2. And it's you could see how, there's like a hardware store. Beyond that, there's like some guy's garage. There's a house. There's a really beautiful Victorian home just further down the street. Across the street, they're remodeling this older home here that's in view. And you could see my wicker chair on my porch. I have a raised porch with like these white columns, the White House columns. It's not a bad place. You could see the snow, how they plowed the snow. We got a lot of snow. And despite that having happened several days ago, that's going to be around for a while in this cold. Snow banks on both sides of the road. But yeah, my mortgage, taxes, and insurance are $200, and I live here. It's not bad, man. You could find a place like this, and have somewhat of a happy life. Well, anyway, I hope this show, was, entertaining, eye-opening, I don't know, thought-provoking. I guess thought-provoking would be, the best we could hope for. We'll continue these types of discussions over the course of the shows I do this year. Like I say, I can't promise I'll do shows every day, but right now, so far, I've been doing them that way. And, it's fun. So.
Good morning.
Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to visit TonyCaravanLive.com or ROCKFLUX.com. On GreatSolarStuff.com, I've added some new things. And, you know, with these cold winters and the fact that particularly in the whole northern half of the U.S., despite what you see on TV when they talk about climate change, you know, we've been having frosts into May. And I don't live in the Northeast. I'm like in the mid-Atlantic states. And people know what I'm talking about. And you saw that weather, you know, thing I put up earlier, the temperatures. And you know what happened in Texas last year and stuff. So there's some things in there if your power goes out. Because when it gets this cold, you know, there's power outages and stuff. Anyway, my last 2 books are there. I've written about 10 books, and there's Then What is my latest. Codex is the one right before that. I recommend both of those books. They're available on Amazon. Get them in print. You could get them out. You could get them in other forms. You know, they're available at Apple Books and Kindle and stuff. But don't think, oh, well, I'm just going to get the Kindle one. The thing is, these things were made for print, and there's things in there, they just work better for print. I don't care what, but somehow both Amazon through Kindle and Apple went somehow in the translation they get distorted, even though I used both the Amazon software and the Apple software to create those files. These books were designed for print, and they haven't taken that into consideration in however their algorithms or their programs were designed. And it's unfortunate that in the year 2022, these companies that rake in, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars just can't get their acts together code-wise. But as you can see, the girl with the Game Over hoodie, we've got all my everything from Everything You Know Is Wrong, You Don't Know What You Don't Know, Game Over, Then What. Even the ROCKFLUX and my branded shirts are available. So go to rockflux.com. I also have a Rumble channel. You know, I'm using ROCKFLUX for that. And I'm on Locals for now, TonyCaravanLive.locals.com. Anyway, check it out if you want to support the site. If you want more of this kind of stuff, you know, support the site. That'll let me know. Thanks. Have a great day.